Okay, this is Barry Lenson from Classical Archives. It's my pleasure today to spend some time and speak with Rory Bricca, who's the composer of at least one new work that I know called Active Galactic Nuclei, which I've been enjoying very much, and I know you will too, if you have a chance to watch it. I think this will be a very interesting talk with a young composer, and I think I'd like to start out. I've learned that starting with the most basic questions is often the best. So before I ask you a bit about the process behind creating active galactic nuclei, can I ask you what they are? What are active galactic nuclei? We've got to
Good
start
question.
it out of the gates, you know?
Yeah, so active galactic nuclei, also known as quasars, if that sounds a little more familiar, are supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies that are, as the name implies, quite massive. Have the mass of 3 billion times the mass of our sun. Um, and they are surrounded by the swirling accretion disk of dust and gas matter that has been like sucked into a kind of orbit around the black hole from nearby stars, other objects, and all kind of sucked into this swirling disk. And then also have other layers too, like a dust torus. So that is a like a donut shaped dust cloud around them, and then also a relativistic jet. So matter being suddenly shot out of the object perpendicularly to the accretion disk at like close to the speed of light. Um, so there's all these different cool parts to these uh, to these astronomical objects that are emitting different frequencies along the electromagnetic spectrum. And we can't actually like really see these things because they're super far away. But this is actually just a theory proposed in the 1990s of active galactic nuclei unification theory, which is the idea that a lot of these different objects that seem to us to be different kinds of objects, as far as I understand it, quasars versus Seyfert galaxies, um, are actually one and the same, just like oriented differently with respect to the Earth, so that maybe the dust torus is blocking some of the radiation that's coming from the accretion disk, for example, and that's why it has a different we looks differently to us from the Earth in terms of the radiation that we're absorbing from
Okay, and
location.
that also must.
Anyway, so I know it's like a lot, but
No, that's
um,
great. But I also would imagine that those factors would limit our ability to see them clearly and observe what's going on.
exactly.
Oh,
Yeah. So because these things are so far away that it's not like we can use a telescope to like go and look at these things. Um, all we really have is, theories about what they might look like based off of the data we're getting from lots of different ones, um, and then, recently, scientists and artists have from like NASA and the European Southern Observatory and places like that have created these animation videos, like I use the video for my piece, um, of kind of their best approximation, their best guess of what these kind of might look like. But of course, keep in mind that it's um, these are just um, sort of artistic representations because a lot of the radiation that they're emitting is not like in the visible spectrum. It's like X-rays and and gamma rays and stuff like that. So, um,
Okay, great.
but it's kind of general sense of kind of
Uh,
shape of these things, I guess.
have you always been interested in this kind of stuff?
No. So actually, this is a great story. So, I mean, I think, as probably a lot of us are, I've always been interested in, to a certain degree, of big questions like what all is out there in the universe, but not particularly until I took this really cool class here at Yale last spring, actually just for my like gen ed science credit for my distributional requirement. And I was like, okay, well, if I've got to take this like science class, I may as well take something like really interesting, right? So I took this class called Introduction to Relativity and Black Holes, uh, which was super cool. It was like basically like um, basically a course on like Einstein for non-STEM majors. Um,
That's
which is
cool.
a nice balance between like you get to learn uh some like really crazy, space-time relativity stuff. But at least the math was like, you know, simplified enough to make it, you know, um possible for someone like me to understand without like a, now, majoring in physics or astronomy or whatever. Um, but still like not simplifying it too much, where still getting the good stuff. And that just blew my mind. I felt like, oh my God, like the idea that um that time is relative, that like two events that from one perspective like seem to happen at the same time, actually from a different perspective could happen like not at the same time. Like, gosh, and talking about it was lots of examples of like, uh, you know, suppose you have a train moving at two-thirds the speed of light. Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Right.
Uh, anyway, so actually, in this class, we had talked about a little bit about like Einstein's biography as well, and kind of our professor made this argument that of course, he did, was not like studying in a university at first. Um, he was working famously in a Swiss patent office, and that fact is not just some like random trivia fact that was actually kind of crucial in his coming up with the theory of special relativity in 1905, because what was he doing in the Swiss patent office? Well, like what were the inventions at the time that were being patented?
Okay.
It was a bunch of like clocks and trains and elevators. Um, and so then you have this guy that comes up with a theory of how the universe works based off of examples of clocks, trains, and elevators.
Yeah.
Trains at he's like, okay, well, what would happen if you have something moving close to the universe's speed limit, and comparing two different clocks like that, can they become desynchronized, like, or stuff like that. Um,
I like stuff like that.
yeah, sure. Anyway, so that kind of our professor was kind of using this as he was also involved, I guess, at one point in the several years ago in the development of the whole system of like distributional requirements here at Yale, that's making you take classes and other disciplines. And this is his example of like why taking science classes is important for non-STEM majors, because it might expose you to something that could, that great ideas might come in places you don't expect them to. And I was
Right.
like, wait, okay, maybe there's like maybe there's something here in trains moving half the speed of light, or in black holes or something that could influence a piece of music.
Right.
Um, and meanwhile, I found out I was going to be going to this summer composition program at the Brevard Music Festival
Oh, very
in North
cool.
Carolina this summer, where I knew I was going to be writing a piece for symphony orchestra that was going to get a reading session there at the festival, and starting to think about what am I want to write for that. And I've actually written several orchestra pieces before, which is so I have some background in that, but also felt like, okay, if I'm going to be writing another piece like this, I need to do something different. I need to push myself um, somehow. Um, and I'm like, okay, I think I want to try something a little crazy, something with an orchestra piece based more on like interesting textures than a like melody or chord progression, which
Yeah.
I'm used to. Um,
Wow.
but I also know that something like that um, can feel super disorienting to me, I listen to like a lot of uh, contemporary music, contemporary orchestra pieces, for example, and I'm like, that those are some like really cool sounds, but I feel like I'm not quite maybe at the point yet as a composer where I can like where so I often feel like this is really cool, but I can't really understand how this is working, in the same way that maybe I listen to a more classical piece and I can understand the sort of music theory behind it. Um, and which is not at all a criticism. That just means that as a composer, it's hard to replicate what you can't understand, So I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So, but I felt I have kind of enough of a sort of intuition of maybe how to create some really crazy sounds that okay. I felt like I just needed something to guide me, and that something could be like being heavily influenced by another piece, maybe, but I was like, maybe that something could come from something in this astronomy class. And then so I kind of had my mind open to that. And then there was this one lecture where we talked about active galactic nuclei, and I'm like, okay, I think I found it.
Okay.
Supermassive black holes, Um,
Yeah, why
and
not?
why not, right? And ended up like, okay, like sticking with that and kind of rewatch it, like after the semester was over, rewatching that lecture several times and kind of learning more about these objects. And spent like about a month before I really wrote any music on the page, like thinking about kind of how in the world you might like a these like these objects and the properties of them might translate into a piece of music. And at first, I was like trying to take it very, very kind of literally. And I opened up a document on my computer, and for a month was just like writing down ideas of possible like correspondences between like, okay, um uh you've got the accretion disk that's emitting X-rays. What do X-rays sound like? And trying to match that to different orchestrational ideas, like what instruments might work, what certain sections of instruments might kind of fit different things. And I had this idea of maybe you start looking at the object from one angle, but gradually transition to like looking at it from a different angle and how that would affect, and I ended up like having all these ideas. It was like 7 pages long, full of like ideas and like images I'd found online, and once I actually got to started writing the piece, I realized, okay, this is definitely a cool idea, but I've taken it a little too far, um,
And
like
what
there's
what
almost,
what
yeah,
instruments,
go ahead.
what is the instrumentation actually?
Yeah, so um I got to write for a full triple wind symphony orchestra, which is pretty cool. So lots of different instruments. So you've got a piccolo, two flutes, two oboes, an English horn, two clarinets in B flat, bass clarinet, two bassoons, contrabassoon, four French horns, three trumpets, two trombones, bass trombone, tuba, piano, harp, three percussionists playing a variety of instruments, including prominently xylophone, brake drum, like you'd find on a car,
Right.
um, bass drum, snare drum, etc. And then full string section of so violins, violas, or two violin sections, violas, cellos, basses.
I'd love to see the score, boy.
Yeah, I mean, I can send it to you if you want to include a little image of it, and I don't know. Um,
Yeah, actually, that might be terrific if you could.
oh, yeah, I will do.
Yeah, we can slug that in to the video. So let me just back up a little bit too and just
Yep.
ask you again kind of where you're from and also how did you get on the path to music?
Yeah, crazy thing to wind up doing with your life, isn't it?
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I was born in New Haven, Connecticut. My parents are documentary filmmakers. So and so I didn't. Some members of my family do play music, but my parents didn't. But they were at least artists themselves, and I think that kind of maybe that was helpful in encouraging me towards this path. Um, the story goes that my grandfather plays the piano, and when I was really really little, sometimes we would sit down together at the piano, and just mess around and play some stuff. And I guess my parents saw me having fun with that, and when I was 5, asked me if I wanted to try taking piano lessons. And I guess I said sure. Uh, and so I started playing the piano. And except that there's always this thing that happened when I sat down to practice, which is that I would start practicing the little piece from the book or whatever, and then I'd get bored and start making up my own stuff instead,
Mhm.
um, and improvising, and that was just always my favorite hobby as a
Okay.
kid.
Wow.
Is I would just like almost every day I would sit down at the piano and just like make up stuff, you know? Uh and so like improvising started for me at an early age, and was never necessarily connected to, a lot of people think about improvisation and they think jazz. And I did start playing jazz sort of in middle and high school, but for me I was first influenced by like, the classical pieces I was playing. Um and that's something that continued all throughout my time taking piano lessons through middle and high school. Is I had enough discipline to get by learning the pieces, uh, but I always struggled with you know I would start practicing and then I'd be like, well, but I would I just want to start playing my own music instead. Anyway, so that was something that just just came really naturally to me. I can't tell you like how it happened. It just kind of did. And formally composing, that is like writing notes like on the page, something that didn't necessarily come as naturally to me. That really kind of, I guess, started in eighth grade, when I joined this educational program. I sorry, back up. When I was 10, I moved to Tucson, Arizona,
Okay.
um, which was nice, a nice sunny place. Took me a bit to get used to the heat at first, but um, but lots of great music opportunities I found there, and including this program with the Tucson Symphony Orchestra that I joined in eighth grade, called their Young Composers Project. which is a really cool, unique program. As far as I know, there are only a handful of similar programs like this in the country. So I guess I kind of was really lucky that I
Yeah,
had
good for
ended up
you.
moving
Yeah.
to Tucson. Yeah. Um, and so kind of a crazy program where taking middle and high school students and giving them the opportunity to write little pieces every few weeks. It was a class on Saturdays, and every few weeks you'd write a piece for like a wind quintet or a brass quintet, and then they'd have members of the Tucson Symphony come into class and like read through your pieces for you, um, which is a super cool opportunity. And then at the end of each year, in the advanced class, you got to write a piece for a full orchestra, and you'd spend the whole second semester, several months writing this piece for the orchestra, and then there'd be this one day in April or May that the orchestra would come in and read through everyone's pieces. You got a reading session. You got 15 minutes per person, uh, and that just blew my mind as a 14-year-old writing my first orchestra piece and getting to hear it performed by a professional orchestra and uh, like I mean it was just something else. Um, Not easy work, mind you. I mean,
Right.
a lot of tears also came from I was just like a little 14-year-old, and I had these like big ideas in my head of how I wanted my piece to sound, and kind of was running into the limitations of what I was capable of doing at that age. But um um
So then you found
anyway,
your way to Yale, right? Well,
yes,
you're
yeah,
Yale undergraduate.
yep.
So what's going on there in terms of music and anything else you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, lots of stuff. I think Yale is a really, really cool place to be as an undergrad, as a musician.
Oh,
Um,
not to interrupt, but what year are you in now?
oh yes, I'm a junior.
Okay.
So I've got one more year before I graduate. A little scary. Gotta go out into the real world, do real world things.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So
yeah. So it's a really unique place to be as a musician because it's a place with a lot of really, really talented musicians who do lots of different things, like playing the Yale Symphony Orchestra. I'm not a part of, but there are lots of really good musicians that play there, and uh, in hundreds of different musical ensembles on campus. There's no shortage. Um, but funnily enough, like, 90% of more of these people are not actually majoring in music. I'm sort of the exception.
hmm,
And also it's nice even if you do major in music, it's pretty broad. I am just majoring in broadly in music. I'm technically not majoring specifically in composition, although I do consider that kind of my primary focus at this point. But it gives you kind of the flexibility to try out a lot of different things. So, um, for example, this year I've gotten to try out being a music director for like a musical
cool.
and a contemporary opera, which is something totally different. And I've gotten to take some conducting and learn more music theory and take lots of really the music major here has lots of really fun, quirky classes that you would like not find at a traditional conservatory classes on like musical theater on Broadway shows, courses on like really crazy music theory classes. On this course I took last semester called musical spaces, sets, and geometries, and it was just this one professor, Richard Cohen's theories about how you could map like chords and scales and stuff onto like 2 and 3 and 4 dimensional pitch space.
Wow,
So like
wow.
which is just like crazy. And it was like it was fun. There was just a group of us like sort of very niche set of like
Yeah.
music theory and math nerds learning about this. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. And also just like great random opportunities. Like I just started taking organ lessons at the Yale Divinity School to try something new. So
Get those feet working, right?
yes.
I
Oh my gosh.
never understood how anybody could do that, but
Yep. It's hard.
I would think it
Um,
would be impossible. Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, so it's a place where you're surrounded by a lot of cool musicians, but it's also kind of a chill environment, maybe more chill environment than you'd find at a conservatory where everyone's kind of really hyper focused on their thing, composition or violin performance or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, um,
So
yeah, so you get to
let me ask you
yeah,
about the video. Now,
yeah,
you wrote
yeah.
the music and then created the video, or was it how
Yes.
did that work?
So, yeah. So I guess when I was first I wrote the music first and then made the video, but I always conceived of it that I wanted visuals with the music. I had kind of been thinking before I started writing it, sort of about my thoughts about the contemporary music world, kind of writing, what it means to write a piece with like lots of really crazy sounds that um, that might be kind of hard to, like I said, maybe a little hard to understand. And I was like, is there a way to uh, is there a way to make it like make people understand what you're trying to accomplish a little better, and that was part of my ideas of like, okay, I think I want a strong concept behind this, maybe the black holes thing, like, but I also had this idea that I got from this composer, Chelsea Comschles, who I had the privilege of meeting a few years ago, who is actually a synesthete herself. She has synesthesia, and
Oh,
that's an important part of her composing process. She starts often with a kind of visual image and then uses her kind of subconscious associations between like images and sound and music to kind of guide her composing process. Now I'm not a synesthete myself, but I thought that was a really cool idea of like what can you do like with the correspondence between music and visuals. And I'm like, okay, I think, so okay, I'm writing this piece about black holes, and I was thinking, if this piece ever gets like performed, I want it to be accompanied by live projections, of animations of black holes. So you bring down the screen like you do for like kind of a Star Wars in concert
right, right.
kind of thing, and you got these crazy images of black holes on the screen, and I assumed that I would have to like pay some animator to like do this, maybe find some other student here at Yale, or I don't know, uh to do something that would like correspond, that would fit my ideas of like how I wanted to view this object from different angles or whatever. And little did I know that there were already these like kind of great animations out there. Like I said, by like NASA and the European Southern Observatory, and also just like random people on YouTube working in like Blender and After Effects. So I composed the piece. I got the recording at the Brevard Festival this summer, and then I was like, okay, well, then maybe I can make a little like mock-up version of the video, kind of maybe to show like what it was like. And I took some of these videos and animations and cut it together, and the kind of it was fun because it was like so I got to use my kind of composition brain of like, I knew this piece really well, in terms of like the different sections and like where the rival points are, the crescendos, and the sections that feel more dark, sections that feel more um, angry and violent, sections that feel really far away, and trying to like, and I found all these really awesome videos and sort of being like, okay, well maybe this one would fit here because you're viewing this object from like a distance, Um, and I'll also mention my favorite part is that the final clip in the video is this video from NASA that was actually released only 2 months before I ended up writing the piece, which so kind of got really lucky on that one. That is this it's this simulation of what it would look like to fall into a black hole.
Okay. Yeah.
And that
Could
is
ruin your whole day. Yeah.
yeah, really could, right?
Yeah.
You get a spaghettified, stretch because like there's this phenomenon that they call spaghettification. It's
Oh,
just a great,
wow.
which is the phenomenon of when you fall into a black hole, as one does. That your feet are closer to the object than your head, right? And because the pull of the gravity of a black hole is so incredibly strong, there's actually a meaningful difference between the amount of gravity that your feet are experiencing and the amount of gravity that the gravitational pull that your head is experiencing, which means that your feet are accelerating towards the object faster than your head. Because it's so strong, that actually means that you're going to be like stretched vertically. Anyway,
Wow,
um,
that's amazing. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, but what that might look like if you were like staring into the object as you were falling. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome because that's actually exactly what I was imagining the end of my piece to be, this big crescendo towards the end, is like falling into a black hole and approaching the Schwarzschild radius, which is where the moment of no return, basically, at which nothing can escape. Um, and I'm like, okay, so this is so perfect, and it's got these crazy things of like, you got this ring around you that gets all contorted um as you're falling in. So that was really perfect. Um,
So are it sounds as
yeah.
though mounting live performances of this work is going to be kind of a daunting enterprise, but are you hoping to have that happen at some point?
So I actually have some very good news on that front. I recently found out that this piece won the 2025 Brevard Composition Performance Prize.
Wow.
Yeah, which
Congratulations.
is very exciting. I'm very, very flattered. Uh, so of all the composers that were there at this festival last summer, they picked one to get a performance brought by the Brevard Music Center Orchestra this summer, on July 27th at their Soloists of Tomorrow concert, where they've got all
Terrific.
the winners of the concerto competitions playing their concertos, and they'll also have my original piece. I'm excited for the concert premiere of this piece on July 27th. Still waiting to hear back about whether the whole projection idea is possible or not. Seems like it'll be
Boy,
an
that's
an
really exciting.
afternoon an afternoon concert, and it's the hall is covered but outdoors, so it might be too bright to see a projection screen, but maybe. Um,
That's great.
yeah,
So can I ask you, are you working on some other pieces that you'd like to
I
tell
am.
us about? Cool.
Sure. I've got a few different projects kind of going on right now, which is crazy. I usually like to try to just work on one thing at a time, but um, so this one piece that I'm writing for this contemporary music group called the Now Ensemble. which consists of flute, clarinet, um, piano, bass, and electric guitar, which is an interesting combination. Um, and so working on that, something much a bit lighter of a piece than active galactic nuclei. A little more fun and light and groovy. Um, and also I'm also starting on this piece for French horn and electronics, or like probably like delay pedal or something like that, which is nice because I play the French horn myself, so that helps
Oh, cool.
when writing it a little bit. Um, I have this idea to another kind of like super nerdy idea that popped into my head of like, what if I base the kind of structure on this of this piece off of the sort of syntactical structure of an English sentence. Uh,
That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of came up with a sentence and I'm like that's sort of self-referential, that kind of a talk it describes exactly what's going to happen in the piece, the sentence, and then the structure of that sentence becomes the structure of the piece. Uh,
Oh,
so where
wow.
like the noun, all like the nouns become stopped, like the stopped notes on the horn, like
Oh,
with less
wow.
words on it, whatever,
Huh.
and all the verbs become something else. And I think
Okay.
it'll be an interesting experiment. And then I'm also writing a piano etude, piano or toccata or something like that. Something that's really fast and rhythmic, and that includes a lot of sort of mixed meter, like rhythmic complexity, so mixed meter polyrhythms, stuff like that.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
So can I ask too, um, what are you thinking might come up for you after you're done with your undergraduate days?
Yeah, the big question. So at this point, I am definitely heavily considering going on to composition grad school. I don't know exactly where yet, but we will see. I might take a year off beforehand. We'll see, just to kind of give myself a time uh, to just take some time off and prepare for the applications. Not while I'm finishing up school. But also thinking about other things. I've recently gotten really interested in this field of music cognition. So kind of bringing together like, music and psychology and cognitive science to understand how our minds like process music, kind of like what's happening in our brain when we listen to music, and those kind of questions I think are really interesting, and potentially like I don't know, might one day might help us write better music if we can kind of understand the sort of mechanisms that are working in our mind, and sort of how, questions like how did our brains evolve to be able to do this really crazy thing, to be able to listen to like sounds and make meaning out of them, like you
Right.
know uh, but like, is there a way that like understanding that can help you as a composer? I don't know, maybe. um
That's terrific.
yeah.
So I think we're coming to the end of the time window that we have. But I don't want to be abrupt. Is there any other topics you wanted to veer into? Just
um
waiting. You're not required to think of something, but
I think I mentioned a lot of what I was hoping to say. Oh, I guess you mentioned like if there are any composers
oh yeah, right. I
that
heard
inspired.
a little like Edgar Varese thing going on.
Yeah, which is a great guess. When I saw that, I'm like, oh man, so true. Like, I'm talking about you know making crazy sounds with the orchestra. Perez wasn't a direct inspiration, but like I mentioned, this composer, Chelsea Comschley, she has this piece, A Hidden Sun Rises, that influenced the piece a little bit, very in terms of its kind of a um, kind of spacey kind of feeling. And also this composer John Corigliano, who's a
Oh,
little more
yeah.
well known. Um, he has this piece that I've been obsessed with for like 4 years now, called Symphony Number 3 for wind band, Circus Maximus, and it's it's about a piece exploring the like kind of extremes of sound. It's also a surround sound symphony, so
Mhm.
there's a you've got a standard like college wind band on the stage, but then you also have a second band of like 11 trumpets and various other instruments that are actually state scattered around the balconies of the hall, sort of playing at the audience from all
Mhm.
angles, which is crazy concept. Um, and anyways, so it's like it's really taking you to the extreme in terms of like intensity and noise. And so I think that definitely helped when thinking of I started thinking about, okay, well, how am I translating this into music? Okay, well, thing number one is you've got a supermassive black hole. So like, potentially the like densest, strongest object in the universe. You're gonna need something really big and powerful, which is how I open the piece, with just these big low
Mhm.
notes, you know. And then halfway through they kind of return with these like big dramatic chords. And I think a little bit of achieving that intensity with a band or orchestra came from John Corigliano. Um,
Very neat. If
yeah.
you'd like to hear it, I have a brief Edgar Varese story, if you can believe that.
Oh, I would love to.
When I was very young, an undergraduate, I was studying composition with a guy who said that he was living in New York City and was studying a work by Edgar Varese. I don't know which work it was.
Okay.
And he wanted some information about one section of it. So he went to the New York City phone book, looked up Edgar Varese, called up Edgar Varese, who was living in New York City, who answered the phone and like answered his questions. It was
Wow.
back in the days when the New York City phone book was a research, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway, but I don't think you could still look up Edgar Varese and find him living in New York City. I don't think so.
Probably not.
Unfortunately, probably not.
Yeah.
So, in any case, we've come up to about 45 minutes, and this is just terrific. So, certainly wish you all the very best with your future
Thank you.
endeavors and with this piece and the pieces to come.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. This is awesome. I mean, this is the stuff I love to talk about, you know?
No, it's really interesting. You're so enthusiastic about it, and I know
Yeah.
in watching, our people will become enthusiastic about your piece and your
I
work.
hope so. It was also fun. Like I got to, once the piece was done, I got to send it to my astronomy professor, and he ended up sending it to some of the other astronomy professors here at Yale, and that was really nice to. Uh, they seemed really excited about someone, taking their really their research on black holes or whatever that can often be really uh just uh too complicated for to really communicate effectively, and to have, yeah, it seems like they really like people to like artists taking scientific ideas and using them as a way to make them more accessible, and raising exposure to things like active galactic nuclei. So I'm glad to be a part of that too. Maybe some of your viewers can get excited about black holes and learn more.
Okay, I'm sure they will. So I'm going to stop recording, but I want you to hang on for just a minute because there's one other thing I want to ask you about.
Sure.
But in any case, thanks a million for taking the time and
Thank
sharing
you.
your time with our Classical Archives audience, who are a very involved and interested bunch of people. So please don't go away. But thanks a million. I really appreciate it.